Hello and welcome to Criminal Record, the Daily Record's weekly crime show. My name is Angus Hyde and today I'm joined by Norman Silvester, crime reporter with the Daily Record. Norman, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Today we'll be looking at the latest dramatic developments in the world of organised crime following raids in Spain targeting the Lyons crime family and the deportation of leader Steven Lyons from Bali to Amsterdam. We've also seen an upsurge in violence back in Glasgow and Edinburgh, linked to a long-running feud between the Lyons and Daniel crime families. Norman, Steven Lyons' arrest is gaining international notoriety. What is the latest?
Yeah, some really dramatic developments in the last 7 days in the long-running saga of the Lyons crime family and the long-running feud, as you referred to, with the rival Daniel family. About a week ago, Steven Lyons, who we know was arrested coming off a plane in Bali last month. He was deported from Bali to Amsterdam in Holland or the Netherlands under a European arrest warrant. Now, the arrest warrant has been sought by the Spanish police, the Guardia Civil, and they're seeking to extradite him from Bali via Amsterdam to Spain to stand trial, possibly in Madrid, or possibly somewhere like Malaga, on charges of being involved in organised crime, running sort of criminal organisations, and being involved in drug running and other aspects of organised crime. So that was quite a development. There was a big enough development last month when he was arrested in Bali. He'd been previously kicked out of United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and he'd been refused entry or asked to leave Bahrain and Qatar. His next port of call had been Bali in Indonesia. He was arrested coming off the plane. The Balinese had this European arrest warrant issued by the Spaniards. They held him for a couple of weeks. This is a fast-moving story because within a couple of weeks, he was on a plane, I believe to move to Singapore, then from Singapore to Amsterdam, where he's currently being held. We know there'll be a hearing now. It was revealed yesterday. There'll be an extradition hearing on June the 4th in Amsterdam, where the Spanish authorities will seek to have Steven Lyons extradited back to Spain to stand trial.
And regarding that hearing, how do you think that is going to play out?
At the moment, we don't know what Steven Lyons' sort of case is going to argue. One would imagine that he'll argue against his deportation or extradition to Spain. However, he might feel it's better to stand trial in Spain and I suppose prove his innocence rather than sit in a jail cell in Amsterdam for months on end. We know in previous extradition cases, we know the Dutch have quite a high bar for extradition, though for example, Britain's got an extradition treaty with Holland, as of Spain, but the Dutch authorities tend to have quite a high bar. So we would imagine that the prosecution authorities in Holland, acting on behalf of the Spanish authorities, will have to present quite a kind of watertight case. We've been told that the judges that sit in this extradition hearing will deliver a verdict around about June the 18th, 2 weeks later, and we'll probably know better then what the exact charges are against Steven Lyons. We don't really know, but we know the overall acting charges in relation to organised crime, running a criminal enterprise and sort of money laundering, running front companies, that kind of thing. But we don't know the fine detail. So I think all will be revealed, but we've got another wait. So it's definitely a case of watch this space.
You know, there's several statements been made regarding the Lyons and the impact that they've had. And the way that they're looking at Steven Lyons as well. Have the Lyons been underestimated in Scotland? Because it sounds like they've been taken seriously across the globe.
That's a very good point. You know, we've covered the Lyons family in quite some detail in the daily records and the criminal records in the last year and beyond that. And we tend to see the Lyons maybe historically in terms of this family from the melting area of Glasgow that ran an operation through a community centre and been involved in this kind of tit-for-tat violent feud with another sort of local family, the Daniel family. But the statements that have been coming out, particularly from the Spanish police, seem to show that the Lyons family, with Steven Lyons at the head, are a major global criminal enterprise. This is not a bunch of guys no longer a bunch of guys in a Glasgow housing estate. This is an organisation that spans the globe, that has police forces in Europe, the Middle East and the Far East investigating, their activities. I thought it'd be quite good just to quote a statement from the Guardia Civil. Now, that's the senior police force in Spain. They investigate terrorism, all the kind of organised crime, the most serious crime in Spain. And they put out a statement and they referred to the Lyons gang. They said the Lyons gang has developed a criminal network in Europe, the Middle East and Asia, with a complex money laundering network based on shelf companies and international financial transactions, managing millions of euros derived from drug trafficking. Its ability to operate simultaneously in several countries, including Spain, the United Arab Emirates and Turkey, and to forge alliances with other major criminal networks, solidify the clan's position as one of the most significant players in contemporary European organised crime. So they definitely see the Lyons family as a major player, maybe at the top of the table, top of the league, possibly alongside one or two other families. But this is no longer maybe a small-time Glasgow drugs gang. This is a crime organisation that has its tentacles spread across the globe. And I was going to refer you to an interesting statement put out by the Balinese immigration authorities who initially detained Steven Lyons last month. They described him as a mafia boss and an Interpol fugitive. So that's quite strong language. And a kind of spokesperson for the immigration says, we will not allow Indonesian territory, especially Bali, to become a haven or base of operations for international criminals. So they're looking at the Lyons as major players on a kind of global scale. And the Dubai police normally don't say much, pretty reticent about what they do. They said that they talk about various arrests and what have you. The Dubai police arrested a member of the criminal organisation referred to the Lyons upon arrival at a Dubai airport. The swift action reflects Dubai police's high level of readiness and the effectiveness of their integrated security systems to tackling transnational organised crime and supporting international law enforcement cooperation. Now, that they were referring to the arrest earlier this month, or last month, sorry, of or confirming the arrest of Steven Lyons' wife. She's currently being held in Dubai on the similar charges to Steven Lyons. So that's three separate organisations with a kind of global reach, all talking about the Lyons in terms of being an international crime gang, of some significance. Just one final thing I was going to refer to, the Civil Guard have described Steven Lyons as the leader of this organisation dedicated to drug traffic and money laundering, as well as the commission of violent crimes of all types. So, they're using, the various authorities are using strong language to describe not only the Lyons crime gang, but Steven Lyons.
Of course, and looking at those two countries as well, they've named Dubai, or obviously City Dubai and Bali. You see a lot of expats coming through. So it's surprising that they're coming out and making strong statements like that. So we've seen arrests and raids in Spain. What is the latest regarding that, and what have they found?
Well, this is a fast-moving story. So we know that Steven Lyons was extradited or deported from Bali to Holland or Amsterdam earlier last week. And then on Thursday and Friday, the Guardia Civil launched a major series of raids across Spain, mainly the Costa del Sol, Malaga, Fuengirola and Barcelona. And it was targeting members of the Lyons crime gang, mainly Scots who were living there, who were holed up there and were part of this international crime syndicate. There was 18 separate operations. There was a number of arrests, bringing total arrest to 15. There have been previous raids in March, so this followed on from that. But the scale of the raids and the police activity last week was unprecedented. They put out video footage of the various arrests, people being handcuffed, and they also released details of some of the stuff that they found during their various raids. So we're talking about cash, you would imagine, mobile phones, laptops, watches, mainly high-end Rolex watches, cryptocurrency wallets. They also found in one of the properties a bar of cocaine with a kind of peacock motif with a value of £90,000. They also found a stash of gin with Steven Lyons' name on it, Steven Lyons' logo. Now, I was just going to kind of tell you the details. The gin had Steven Lyons' initials in gold letters and a lion logo, and the coke brick, as it is described, had a peacock motif. So we're seeing a bit, just a bit of a side show really there, but showing the kind of wealth and sort of cash and drugs that are involved in these raids.
Gives you an insight into the kind of lifestyle these guys are chasing as well.
Yeah, I understand many of the properties are quite luxurious, and the people that were residing there were living sort of kind of 5-star lifestyles. And obviously the stuff that's being seized is high-end Rolex watches, cocaine, cryptocurrency wallets, personalised alcohol consignments, that kind of thing. Just shows that the kind of level that they're operating at.
So we've seen raids. Can we expect some work on the way?
Well, the police in Spain, or Guardia Civil, have said that they're looking at another 20 individuals. So this is an ongoing kind of series of raids and arrests. It's part of an operation with Police Scotland. Police Scotland obviously providing intelligence. Most of the people that have been arrested in Scotland, in the sort of Glasgow, Lanarkshire area, West Lothian, but there's also been significant arrests in Spain itself. Would expect some of those arrests in Scotland have already appeared in court, and would expect they'll be facing trial, if not this year, next year. In Spain, the legal process is slightly different. It could be a lot of those arrested could have to wait several years. Normally in Scotland, they try to bring people to trial within a year or so. But in Spain, they can wait up to 4 years, and that might be the same for Steven Lyons if or when he's ever extradited to Spain. So it's very much watch this space. I think this is a story that's not going away anytime soon, and we're going to see a lot of criminal proceedings over the next couple of years.
How significant are these arrests in terms of the fight against organised crime, and what happened to those that are already in custody now?
It's a major victory for law enforcement, and it shows the nature. We know that crime is now quite global, that we've got criminal gangs setting up bases in Spain, Dubai, Turkey, Greece, Holland, but we're seeing it, and I think what I would describe as unprecedented cooperation between various countries. We don't necessarily have extradition treaties with other countries, but they don't want organised crime groups setting up bases in their country. I think over the years, Dubai's had quite a kind of open-minded attitude to people that come and live there and set up businesses. But I think they're genuinely concerned with some of the individuals. They don't like the flack. They don't like the publicity. It's not good for the image of Dubai. And you can see how quickly the authorities in Bali acted last month with the arrest of Steven Lyons. That's a tourist haven. They want to present a popular image of the country, not, a kind of Costa del Sol crime hideaway.
Yeah, I think we've seen a bit more with the Balinese taking action on
definitely zero tolerance, more than probably anyone else that we've seen.
Yeah, of course, and looking abroad, it all comes back here. It all comes back to Milton and Glasgow at the end of the day. What are Police Scotland saying about this action across the globe?
Well, Police Scotland linked up with the Spanish police last month and did a series of raids at properties in Glasgow, sort of Lanarkshire, and there was West Lothian as well. They've not said too much because really, again, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, the global nature of this is now a Spanish operation. They seem to be linking up with the Dutch, with the Emiratis, with the Dubai authorities, with Turkish authorities. We know that there's been properties and assets seized in Turkey. Obviously, we know about the Bali connection. So it looks very much, though we see the Lions as a kind of Glasgow Scottish crime family, essentially now they're seen as an international crime. So the focus of the investigation is moved away from Police Scotland more towards the authorities in the relevant country they're operating. So, but we know this Police Scotland have come out publicly say they're assisting the Spanish authorities and others in investigating organised crime groups and not just the Lions.
Yeah, and then talking about Scotland coming back, we've seen an upsurge in violence at home again. Tell us about last week's events in Edinburgh and Glasgow that's seen several machete attacks and firebombings.
Yeah, we've reported in the Daily Record the last 25 years of the tit-for-tat violence between members of the Lyons and Daniel crime families. That kind of died out a wee bit, and then there was a resurgence in March last year where a particular individual linked to the Lyons family orchestrated from Dubai, from his base in Dubai, a series of attacks, machete attacks and firebombings of properties and premises in both Edinburgh and Glasgow linked to members of the Daniel crime family and also their associates. And these incidents also, as well as firebombings of properties, premises, cars, vans, also included machete attacks. Police set up Operation Portalege to target these incidents. It's very successful, more than 60 arrests, and already a number of people have been sentenced to lengthy prison terms. That seemed to put a bit of a lid on it, but the recent incidents, arrests, if you like, or activity targeting the Lyons family seems to have created a resurgence of violence. So we saw an incident beginning of last week in the town of Wallingford, which is near Dalkeith in the outskirts of Edinburgh, where it was a man with links to the Daniel crime family and a Daniel crime family associate, Mark Richardson, who's currently serving a prison sentence. He was attacked with a machete, and we know a number of people have since been arrested. There was also a kind of MOT station stroke garage in the Balmore Road area of Lamb Hill, just sort of on the border with Postle Park. That there was cars there firebombed, and that these premises have been linked in the past to the Lyons family. In fact, in 2006, a member of the Lyons family was murdered. And ironically, Steven Lyons was caught in the crossfire, and he was seriously injured as well, though he recovered. And on the back of that incident, he decided to relocate to Spain and then Dubai for his own safety. So that was a bit, of turning full circle, but there wasn't the same levels of violence. It seemed to be simply cars and properties, vehicles at that particular spot being set on fire. We know of a camper van and an Audi in the Postle Park area, linked or owned by members of the Daniel family, that was set on fire. So we've had these kind of incidents as a resurgence, not as serious as before, but it could be a further escalation. But having said that, the police have been very successful in apprehending those responsible to date.
Yeah, of course, and you're referring to things like obviously we saw some horrific incidents in the early noughties. But in Scotland, we've seen the likes, in terms of big names, we've seen the likes of Arthur Thompson, Tam McGraw, etc. And your experience covering Scottish crime, have we ever seen anything quite like this, where it's kind of escalating in this way?
No, this is completely new. I think we've seen in the last 10 to 50 years, organised crime change. Some of the figures you mentioned were effectively local crime bosses operating in Glasgow, involved in the drugs trade, maybe with connections with Liverpool crime gangs or London crime gangs. The new generation of organised crime groups, they're dealing direct with the drugs cartels in the Central America, Mexico, Brazil. We know one of two brothers who are now thought dead, who had based themselves out in Brazil and were orchestrating large consignments of drugs coming into Europe beyond. That's one of the allegations against the Lyons crime family and others, that they're involved in a sort of global drugs trade, a global criminality. Whereas in the past, if you go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, home into the noughties as well, that really it's still localised. It's all Glasgow crime gangs with their own kind of territories dealing with other crime gangs across Scotland, across Britain. Now it's our organised crime groups are based abroad, and they're dealing with other international crime groups on a global scale.
Obviously coming into a modern era as well for organised crime. Talking about you've been writing about a gangland figure named Derek Ferguson, who's been on the run for the last 19 years and is wanted for murder. Can you tell me a wee bit more about that?
Yes, this is a series that we're looking at in the Daily Record, the Unsolved Gangland Murders. I mean, a gangland murder is the most difficult one for police to solve because the public generally are reluctant to come forward with information. I think they don't want to get involved. they maybe learn or know about the notoriety of the people involved, especially the perpetrators. They generally don't provide the same levels of information to the police as you might get with a murder of a child or an elderly person or something more mainstream. So gangland murders tend to be very difficult to solve because of reluctance of people to come forward, and often the victims themselves or people involved in the periphery that are reluctant to help the police. This is one that we highlighted. It kind of ties in with what we've just been discussing. It's a murder of a bar manager, Tam Cameron. He worked in a Auchinleon Tavern in Bishop Briggs. He was a married man with three children, 3 grown-up children. He'd been working that evening. It was a kind of summer's evening. There's 2 people who came to see him to discuss a matter. A kind of disturbance broke out in the kind of car park area, and one of the 2 men pulled out a gun and shot Tam dead. The suspect for that murder has since been identified as a suspect, or somebody that the wording is somebody that the police want to speak in connection with Tam Cameron's murder, which was in June. It was over 19 years ago. We're talking about June 2007. Is a Derek Ferguson, known as Deco. He's been on the run, if you like. He's fugitive for justice for the last 19 years. He is believed to be hiding out in Spain, possibly, or maybe in other countries. He's believed to have changed his identity, his appearance. Obviously, he will have aged during that time. He partly uses a kind of fake, bogus Irish accent. But the police force is not just in the UK, but across Europe, been looking for him for this time. Derek Ferguson is also wanted in connection with a second murder of a Billy Bates, who was found dead a couple of weeks after the murder of Tam Cameron. Billy Bates is believed to be the second man who was with Derek Ferguson in the car park on the night Tam Cameron was murdered. So Derek Ferguson wanted for the murder of Tam Cameron. Police also want to speak to him about the murder of Billy Bates. We don't know too much about his background, but it certainly was known to the police prior to the murder. We think he may have been getting hidden, protected by organised crime groups in the continent. So we think he has got links to organised crime, but he's been on the run for 19 years. There's been no sightings of him, and it's a real mystery. But the police, as far as I'm aware, the police believe he's still alive out there somewhere.
Of course, and we'll keep an eye on your reporting as we explore that story. Finally, the fight against organised crime seems to be eating into the police budget. Of course, you said Police Scotland making real moves to do this, but we're seeing overtime payments last year touching the £28 million mark. What's the problem here?
Yeah, one of the issues for the police is, they're fighting battles on a lot of fronts. Police probably there's more work for police than ever before. There's been budget cuts and budget restrictions. There's a lot of money gone in to the Operation Portalage, which I mentioned earlier, which is the operation set up to target the recent violence in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but also resources are being put into, obviously, helping foreign police forces with various investigations. One example might be the double murder of Eddie Lyons Jr. and Ross Monaghan, obviously both members of the Lyons crime family. They were murdered in a bar, Monaghan's bar, in May last year. And the police provided some assistance to that, mainly intelligence, to be fair. So they'll be providing assistance to other elements of that Spanish inquiry. They'll be involved in the raids back here in connection with the Lyons family, and also targeting and arresting those involved in this kind of tit-for-tat violence. So that's eating into the police budget. There's also a shortage of police officers at the moment. It's probably at a record low. So it's eating into the police budget. And we revealed that the Police Scotland are currently spending £600,000 a week on overtime. And that's around about £31 million a year. And we asked for a comment from the police on that. And they were saying that over the last 12 months, the demand has increased, both in respect of policing serious organised crime and also dealing with various protests and major events. So they've acknowledged the fact that they're having to use a lot of their money to investigate serious and organised crime.
Yeah, of course. And in the world where budgets are under serious microscopes. That's definitely something on the minds of the police. Well, thank you, Norman, for joining us, and thanks to our audience for tuning in to Criminal Record. If you have a question for the team, you can email reporters@dailyrecord.co.uk with the subject line Criminal Record. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can subscribe to listen to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts by searching for Criminal Record, or you can watch it each week on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Goodbye.